a presentation on the fund balance policy. I'm going to follow that up with a quick update on the status of the aid and incentives for municipalities funding. So Bill, if you wouldn't mind joining me up here, he's going to be cycling through the slides. And so we've been talking a lot about fund balance policy. In several of our meetings, we are trying to formulate the best possible fund balance policy for our town that's both prudent and will also be successful for us. So I figured it would be good to give everybody background, both for town board's edification and our department heads, as well as the public, on what we'll be doing. So to begin, we can go into what a fund balance policy is. And what is a fund balance? So simply stated, fund balance is the difference between assets and liabilities for a particular fund that have accrued over the fund's existence. So that's essentially when the fund was created, it trends out what that fund balance is over time. The fund balance can accrue in any constituted fund. So that includes general fund, highway fund, also the water and sewer funds. So that's each individual water and sewer fund also has their own fund balance. Next, we have history of fund balance and policy. So prior to January of 2001, so this goes way back, municipalities could not carry over any unappropriated or unreserved fund balance. Because of Chapter 528 of the Laws of 2000, which was submitted by the state comptroller at the time, municipalities were allowed to then carry over a reasonable amount of unappropriated, unreserved fund balance from one year to the next. And that change was needed because, as outlined by an Office of the State Comptroller Accounting Bulletin released in July 2001, local governments were encouraged to adopt fund balance policies and determine a reasonable amount of fund balance to carry over. And in doing this, several things can be accomplished. You can offset tax increases, you can create a cushion for revenue shortfalls during poor economic times, such as what happened in 2008. We saw a lot of towns who didn't have a healthy fund balance built up. It really affected them more negatively than towns that were prudently setting aside a healthy amount of fund balance and accruing that year over year. It also helps a town maintain investment grade credit ratings. So it is helpful when we go out on the bond market and get different sorts of financing. It encourages long-term capital planning initiatives. It also guards against excessively high fund balance and overtaxation to the public. So calculating a reasonable fund balance, either a specific dollar amount can be set aside from unassigned fund balance, or a percentage of annual expenditures can be set aside with consideration to the following: the current balance coupled with projected revenue and expenses. So if you had a balance that wasn't as heavy or healthy, and you knew that you had projected revenue shortfall, that's something that you would want to take into consideration before appropriating any of that fund balance. You would also want to keep in mind your prior year history of fund balance accruals. So if it's sort of all over the place on a trend line, that would be pretty uncertain. So you wouldn't want to base your next year projection off of the prior year. You would want to take probably a 10-year projection model and project that out. You would also want to consider your known or anticipated revenue and expense constraints. So things like salaries and related. If you know you want to hire someone next year, you want to build that in and consider or have consideration for that before you appropriate any of that unassigned fund balance. You also want to know what your capital expenditures are going to be, or at least try to know. And then also keep in mind what the contingency budgets are. So we have healthy contingency budgets in each of our funds. That's a good thing because we don't have to rely so heavily on our unassigned fund balance to account for any of those unforeseen expenditures that come up. So next we have an example. Your town is doing well fiscally and you have a healthy fund balance. That's awesome. The town's general fund balance is currently $3 million and is unassigned or unrestricted. If your total general fund appropriations are approximately $11.5 million, if you set your maximum unassigned fund balance to 25% of appropriations, And that 25 percentage point can change. That can fluctuate. That's something that we as a town board are going to be deciding on. Then your maximum carryover of your fund balance is going to be $2,875,000, leaving $125,000 to be appropriated or assigned to a reserve fund. And that's just one example. We can, like I said before, set a specific dollar amount. We can set a percentage of what we deem as appropriate. So it could be as low as 15%. It could be as high as 35%. It's all going to depend on some of the known factors that we can project out. So allocating excessive fund balance. This is equally as important as determining the reasonable amount. So designating where the excess fund balance should be allocated. There are recommended proper allocations for fund balance, and those are for one-time, non-reoccurring, non-operating expenditures. Say that 10 times fast. So those are things like equipment, capital outlay, so cars, trucks, that type of thing, improvements to buildings. It could also be used for a necessary contract of extraordinary expense, so something like an extraordinary legal fees that the town might face, also possibly fines. And yes, that does happen. It's ideal if it doesn't. Next, there's reducing debt principal and or property taxes. So those are all good things. Reducing debt principal especially is good to just reduce that debt as much as possible. And then funding of constituted reserves. So a constituted reserve fund, there are several that are out there. The one in which we're going to be looking towards setting up and constituting is going to be a capital reserve fund. So any excessive fund balance that's diverted to the capital reserve fund would be used specifically for capital improvements. So that would also be an additional constraint so that the money couldn't just go into any pool to be used for whatever reason. If it went into a specific capital reserve fund, it can only be used for a specific purpose. So it would help in giving us much more control over that pool. And also important is how you're going to replenish fund balance. So you don't always just want to be taking from this pool of money, never replenishing it, because that can also put you into a detrimental spot. So each plan should also have a replenishment plan as part of it. You can set a minimum balance to cover at least the projected first 2 months expenditure of the following fiscal year. That is the most prudent practice. As a town, we would probably want to set aside at least 6 months, just to be sure. Town should also strive to keep the minimum level and replenish it by the following fiscal year or over a period of no more than 3 years. So if it did fall below a minimum, then we would stop drawing from the fund balance immediately, determined by our policy, and then we would replenish that fund balance ideally by the next year or over the course of 3 years. So in conclusion, I say the key to establishing a successful fund balance policy is striking the right balance. And that's because there are so many different factors that go into it. They all have to be looked at. They are all equally important as one another. And that's why it's been a process. We've had a lot of meetings. Denise, I know. You know that as well as I do. And the town board members as well. It's something we've been talking about. We've had a lot of prudent and positive discussion on it. So hopefully it's something we can vote on at the end of the month. But if not, we're going to keep discussing it, keep honing in on our projection models, and hopefully we can have a fund balance policy passed soon. Thank you, Bill. And really quickly, an update on the AIM funding. So in January, we passed a resolution unanimously calling on the governor to reinstate this aid. Several other municipalities joined with us. That was a good thing. It was a real grassroots effort. The Association of Towns also were lobbying on behalf of the towns. Our representatives in the legislature, including Assemblyman Steck, Senator Tedisco, wrote letters lobbying on our behalf as well, calling on the reinstatement of this aid. So we stand to potentially lose, or we stood at a particular point in time to lose $101,675. That amounts to approximately 1.25% tax increase right off the bat as we head into the 2020 budget. So that was, something that was, it wasn't good news, to say the least. But thankfully, there has been an amendment to restore the AIM funding. There's one caveat though. This funding won't come directly from the state. It's going to come from the closing of a sales tax loophole, so an internet sales tax loophole, whereas that sales tax was not collected previously, it's now going to be collected. So our sales tax disbursements come from the county. So the current proposal restores AIM funding by using that revenue from the proposed internet sales tax closure. So the state is estimating that it will cover that $60 million that was initially cut. So that's a good thing. Their projections are really healthy. In total, they're projecting about $390 million for the state as a whole, but that $60 million piece that was cut initially, they're expecting to come back. So that is good news. The only thing that we want to do is to be diligent to talk to the county to see if they have projections and what those projections are to make sure that we'll be made whole. So I, along with Supervisor Chris Ketzley in the town of Glenville, hopefully some of the other towns are going to be signing on to this joint letter as well. So we're going to be requesting from the county if they have any revenue projections, and if they do, what those are, if they can share it with us, because we want to make sure that we are going to be getting that revenue back. Glenville is standing to lose about $176,000. So they're in a worse position than we are. But ideally we'll be made whole. So that's the status on that. If I hear anything, I will make an announcement about that. And we're going to roll.
It should be noted that the Senate nor the Assembly support the latest
Correct.
governor's proposal. So I think it's pretty unlikely that that will move forward as a funnel through for internet sales tax going to the county, then the county having to tell us. And I don't see that happening. The Senate nor the Assembly, who are both in the process of putting out their one-house budgets, they've pretty much rebuked the governor's proposal. So I'll keep
Good.
everyone posted.
Good. Well, that's good news as well. Thank you, Denise. We are going to roll into the agenda items, and we're going to begin with Laura.
The first item is a resolution recognizing Arbor Day. It's a little bit early this year because we're designating Arbor Day on April 27th, and I think the town board meeting is like a couple days later that month because of the spring break. So we wanted to be able to have the resolution at Arbor Day, and for the timing to work out, we would like to have it approved by you guys at the end of March, and that way we can read it and it'll be adopted on April 27th. We've currently scheduled the Arbor Day at Blatnick Park near the pond in the pavilion, and we would be planting a tupelo tree. We are trying to coordinate an art contest with the school and about trees, and have Girl Scouts maybe come and do a project, and have a ask a tree expert, and of course give away trees. But we're trying to have it be more than just giving away trees, because some people just can't fit trees in their yard. So we want everybody to celebrate trees, whether or not they can actually take one home. So we have an Arbor Day committee that's been working very hard on it, and we're hopeful that's going to be very successful. Number 2 is a resolution adopting an interim ADA transition plan. We talked about this a little bit. It's a midway step between adopting an actual transition plan. What it does is it outlines how we're going to collect all the data on our sidewalks and our right-of-ways, and then we'll be able to use all that data to prioritize how we want to go about making all of our pedestrian facilities in the right-of-way ADA accessible. So our intern, very capable intern, has been handling it, brought the draft to the EDHP committee. Looked like it was pretty good. We just had a couple tweaks on how we're measuring the sidewalks, because the intern's actually been going out and measuring the sidewalks. And so that'll be ready by the end of the month. Number 3 is the resolution creating an architectural review board. We're following up on the presentation that David DiArpino did. We weren't able to have a draft of how this would work to the EDHP committee. And so I think that probably it'll be safer to push this to April. So what we'll do is we'll get a draft, we'll run it by the planning board, make sure that everybody is pretty okay with how it's going to work, and then bring it to the economic development committee, and then bring it to you guys in April. Number 4 is a resolution awarding the contract for the aqueduct bathrooms. That was tentative also because it was a little bit of a question on how it was going to work, but I think that's probably more likely to be April too, because we're going to separate things out and put that out to bid. So I'm also going to sort of push that into April. Number 5 is a resolution hiring an engineer for the Mohawk Watersheds project. We've had this on here a couple of times. We actually have had gone out to try and get quotes a couple of times, and they've always come too high. So we reduced the scope and put it out, and we're hopeful that we're going to have somebody that's going to come in budget by the end of the month. Number 6 is a resolution in support of State Assembly Bill A4403 McDonald to shorten foreclosure times on zombie houses. Denise brought this to our attention. It's helpful to communities to be able to take action on these zombie houses faster than they currently can right now. You probably know a little bit more about it than I do. What I briefly read was that right now it's like, 2 years plus, and this would help to make it go to 1 year, so maybe like half the time to be able to take action on these homes that are blighted communities. Do you want to add anything?
No, it's already passed the Senate, so we're hopeful that our push here at the Niskayuna Unitown Board will make the Assembly move on this immediately. It's the right thing to do. I mean, Laura, you and I have been working on this for years. I've been working on this for a lot longer than you've been here. And there's so many hoops to jump through, and the time that's allotted, tell that to the folks who live on Cornelius, tell that to the folks who live on Rosendale by the other house. So it's really, we need to do all we can to move the process along a little quicker.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys, anything that can move the process along quicker is obviously better. And I think that they did put some balances in there, so it's not like it's giving the government the power to just take homes. There's balances in it, so it looked like it was a good thing to move forward.
Thank you.
And then number 7 is a resolution in support of provisions in the governor's New York fiscal 2020 executive budget prohibiting distribution of single-use plastic bags. I can't remember if, no, I don't. So we've had a person come to the Economic Development Committee meeting asking if the town could look into single-use plastic bags. The CAC was reviewing what other towns are doing. We looked at Massachusetts. Almost all the cities in Massachusetts have banned single-use plastic bags. California has an outright plastic bag ban across the state. Hawaii actually has a de facto statewide plastic ban because every single county in Hawaii adopted it. So we were originally looking at maybe we could figure out some way for Niskayuna to move this forward, but the governor, at the same time that we were looking at it, put something in his budget to do it statewide that's much more beneficial to us because it's not targeting a single business within the town of Niskayuna. So we have a couple people on our CAC who understand the way these things work, and the governor passes his budget at the end of the month. So if we could get in a resolution in support of the banning of the single-use plastic bags, that would be our recommendation to you guys. There are exceptions, like takeout food and plastic bags on newspapers and plastic bags that go around meat and fish, and you can still have plastic bags in your garbage cans and your sandwiches. But I think it's really trying to reduce those light plastic bags that you get in stores that are very hard for the landfills to control and end up getting into the ocean and into the environment and being very polluting to our world. So anybody have any questions on those things?
Could you just explain the Mohawk Watershed project briefly?
Oh, yeah, sure. We applied for a Mohawk Watershed grant, I think actually 2 years ago. And the idea of the grant is that when the Rexford Bridge went in, the new one, it came a little bit closer to the docks at Aqueduct Park. And so they had to flip-flop the docks. And so originally the big dock where everybody launched their kayak and everything went off this nice bulkhead gangway walkway. It was very easy for people to access. But when they had to flip-flop the docks, now you're using basically you're using an access to the dock that was never meant to be like the access to the docks. It's very grassy, gets very muddy, it's not very accessible, and it causes a lot of erosion problems into the Mohawk. So the point of the grant is to update the access to that dock, make it more publicly accessible, reduce the erosion, landscape some of the access way down there so that pollutants aren't getting into the Mohawk, and hopefully create a new anchoring system for those docks so that in high floodwaters and stuff like that, they're not at risk of being ripped out of the banks and washed away, which is also problematic.
Thank you.
Plastic bags. So as you know, I've talked to you about this. I've talked to others about this. I take this very seriously. I've already had a conversation with ShopRite on this. I've had a brief conversation with the co-op. They were going to see what they can do. I had an extensive conversation with Neil Golub about this. Apparently, Mona Golub is a statewide leader in this effort, working on behalf of the Food Merchants Association and others in the industry. They have some very pretty specific ideas around all of this. Not saying they're at all opposed, they just are looking for balance so I'm scheduled to speak with Mona later this week. I'll feedback all of that information that she provides to everyone here, not just some, but everyone. But I think that part of this is we've got to make sure that whatever we're doing, we have a lot of markets in this town suddenly. We went from not having that many to, and we just need to take into consideration their positions on all of this.
Yeah, because there are, people have been asking for amendments to the plastic bag ban. So I sent the ones that I found to you guys. So there may be room, for figuring out the balance. It may not be perfectly balanced yet. So I definitely think
Right,
that.
and it may not be, whatever we pass, we may be just trying to give a sense of this board in this town that we
Yeah.
support doing more. So, because there are other considerations that they are, all of these, and we're very fortunate. We have all of these stores in our community are very civic minded and are all very involved in statewide associations, and they all have very specific positions on it. But they all see it's coming. So I think they
Yeah.
just want to be part of the solution. They've all been very helpful. And then I just have one last thing. I'm not sure if this is a your committee or this is a Ray committee issue, but I was hoping that we could add a resolution to the regular meeting requesting that we get semi-annual reports from the town historian, written reports. They don't have to be long, on one page. I think there's just been some confusion around the historian. There's some sense that some of the board members may have opposed this town historian. That's certainly not the case in any sense. I do know there's other folks out there who are very interested in being part of a historian committee, and I just don't want to see people be turned away from something if they can be helpful. I also know that there's folks who are very interested in having an Ed Riley plaque, and an Ed Riley case in the Ed Riley building. So if that's okay with you, Supervisor,
Sure.
I just think if we can get a sense of what's going on there and maybe some other folks can be helpful. No one has ever opposed this town historian. I'm going to say it again. I think what John and I originally proposed was we just thought perhaps a committee. So see how he's doing
Sure. Yeah.
and how we can be helpful to him, because obviously we very much appreciate anyone who wants to be part of our town government here. So is that okay for you, Laura? I don't know
Yeah,
where it would
I
come.
can-
John, I know John is
yeah.
I've discussed this with John, so.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Laura. Marietta?
Number 8 is a resolution to appoint an attendant at the transfer station. We continue to advertise and promote on our town webpage. If anyone's interested, please contact me. We currently have 2 guys down there right now. They're doing a very good job, but we'd like to have additional people in the group so that some guys could have coverage if they couldn't make a specific day, and for sickness and other events that may require more than 2 people to be there. Number 8 is a resolution to appoint a water and sewer maintenance worker. We have at least 2 openings right now in the water and sewer maintenance crew. 2 people that worked with us for a while have taken jobs elsewhere. We're always looking. We have an ad in the paper in both going in this week in the Times-Union and in the Gazette, and also using Indeed to try to get some more applicants. We just hired one, but unfortunately we have 2 more openings now. So that's ongoing. And then number 10 is a plant mechanic at the wastewater treatment plant. We have an opening there as well. Similar requirements for the applicants. So the group of people that are applying, we can look at the different applications and see where they best fit. Number 11 is a resolution that approves the utility warrant for the second half of 2018. The numbers are in. We've done all the checking, and we're confident that everything looks good and is ready to be approved by the town board. 12 is a resolution to purchase a van for use in the water and sewer crew. We're going to be getting the results from mini bid in the next week or so, and should have the results ready for the next board meeting. This was in our budget for the year. For this year, we budgeted for it in our operating budget. I have two resolutions that I mentioned at the Finance Committee. A resolution to award a contract to build a bathroom for use by the transfer station and for Blatnick Park. And then a second resolution to purchase the materials to build that. The two separate resolutions. The contractor that wants to do the work has no problem with the town buying the materials, saves us money, saves us from markup that typically happens with contractors. So, any questions?
No.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Right. You're next.
I love everyone has to be invited to come up.
Did you do the bonds once or no?
Yes.
Okay,
Mm.
so
Oh, I'm
you
sorry.
didn't, so you got 13.
Yeah, no wonder you were
14, 15.
confused that,
Are those
Did
Matt?
we skip those?
yeah, we need, Matt, you have a bunch more.
13, 14, 15.
Okay. Okay, well, why don't we
Yeah.
wait for Janet's? We don't have it. We're having a special finance committee meeting anyway.
Mhm.
So we'll just, don't worry about those, right?
Yeah,
Sorry.
these are the ones we did the public hearings on.
Right.
Right, so that's,
So we're just
They're
moving
just
forward with
adding.
the
We're-
next step.
we all agree that they should be added to the agenda. You don't have to,
So start with 18.
that would be
Yes.
great.
Okay. 18, a resolution to accept temporary labor rates for 2019. That was for summer help hired within the highway. We discussed that committee. Number 19, resolution to purchase various items off the 2019 Schenectady County bid. A lot of these processes are the same we use. In some instances, they're cheaper than the bids we got. There's also some other options in there that we may want to use down the road that we don't currently bid out. So it gives us an opportunity to have other avenues and other commodities. Number 20, a resolution to accept the bids for mowing services for Dean Street Park and Baker Avenue Park. That was in the paper last Friday. The bid opening's on the 18th, and I'll have a recommendation for the board meeting for those two park districts. Number 21 is the resolution to accept the rollover bids for the mowing of various holding ponds. Last year, we did an option of a 3-year contract with Brightview. The comptroller reviewed the increase for this year, said it was acceptable. And that was for, I think, 6 or 7 holding ponds that they did last year. So it's just a rollover of what they did, nothing extra.
So there was an increase, no?
A little bit. I think he said it was 2% or.
Mhm.
And all 3 quotes were given when they did their bid. So we kind of knew that was coming anyway. So it's just a formality of approving it. 22 is a resolution to accept quotes for seed and fertilizer for 2019 Public Works. This is the hydro seed and fertilizer used by mine and Matt's crews for lawn repairs along the roads or reconstruction areas. Number 23 is a resolution to accept quotes for fertilizer purchase and spreading services on the town facilities if we so choose to. That's it for me.
I think that's us.
Okay.
We did that in our committee, the license agreement is our
Yeah, you want me to
committee.
read that? All right, 24, a resolution to approve a license agreement with a graduate student conducting a Fisher's study.
I'll comment on that.
Sure, quickly.
So a young gentleman from SUNY Albany, graduate student, wants to study fishers in the town of Niskuna to continue a study that was done years earlier. And he's going to set some cameras out in the town, and we felt in town parks. Sounds like he's going to give us a copy of the study when he's done with it.
So it's great, but we need a license agreement with
Right.
folks who are doing things on our town property. So that's the purpose of it. I have just a couple of other things. If nobody else has issues with the Fishers. Okay. I can't remember. Did we just have to do it at the committee, your employee salary issue, or was that a resolution?
For
Changing your salary on your employee the summer?
the summer, that was the first,
That's in all of the temporary labor rates?
just the highway.
Just that one? Okay, so
Appointed the
that's in that one.
highway, the ones that come in through parks are mostly
So it's just in that
returners,
reso. I
and
just
they'll
didn't
be
know if
on
it was a separate
reso.
one. And then, is it you or is it Matt who's going to, we are moving forward with the RFP for River Road and the updates to River Road. So
I think that was Matt.
That was
that's Matt. So
Mhm.
no, but how long do you think it will take? Are we should we put, you won't have it by the 26th? That's my question. And then just briefly because people care desperately about this topic, how are we doing on our Avon Crest sign?
Our Avon Crest sign, I still have not received.
Look, they're writing. All the reporters are writing.
I will follow up with the contractors that I contacted. Obviously, the snow is starting to melt. I've got calls out to 3 contractors that said they would go out and give us a quote on the damage to the sign. I know that the insurance company of the person that hit it has reached out to the town and is awaiting them quotes, and we'll work that out between, and I'll bring that information to you to decide.
Cannot wait. Maybe I'll
how
have
we
a whole
wanna do
PowerPoint on
Mhm.
that.
But
So it's
I-
an important
I have
issue
reached
facing
out
our
to-
town government.
I
Thank
will follow up tomorrow with them and
Great.
get that moving.
Did
Terrific, Ray.
insurance, Ray, did the insurance agree to cover the sign or?
Well,
all
up to a
covered?
certain point, they kind of gave if it's
Yeah,
under this, we'll
5,000.
cover
Okay.
it. If it's over that, they'll send an adjuster out. So
Good, okay.
they'll be sending an adjuster out.
I like my guy in this situation. I'll tell you, my money's on Briggs every time in this one.
Yeah.
Hi, Lori. Lori got the maroon memo.
Lori. Yay.
Number 25 is a resolution to appoint spring soccer referees and driving range employees. Spring's right around the corner, at the end of April, soccer starts, and hopefully, weather permitting, the driving range opens up. So I'd like to appoint some workers.
Great. And when are you thinking you'll get the summer book out? What's your target?
Oh,
for
it's
the
always
summer book?
April 1st. Yep, we're almost there.
Just
Almost
wanted to give
there.
you a free commercial. Great. My
Any
favorite
questions?
time of year.
Questions? No?
Nope.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Lori. Okay. Now, Paul is not with us because he's on vacation, so he's really lucky. In his absence, we have Miss Janet Nguyen.
I don't know how far you want me to go with this. We have a resolution to make certain budgetary modifications. As we said upstairs, right now, I've only presented you with some two small 2019 budgetary modifications, but I may need to make some for the end of the year to close by March 31st. And once I know what those figures are, if there are any, I will email all of you individually with that attachment so that you have forewarning and you know the reason why. Most of it's going to be because it's something that's already over budget and it has to be covered. If I don't cover it, then you get an over budget end of year report and the money rolls up from fund balance. So the proper thing to do is to just cover them. And that's it. I think you're going to do are you going to do the fund balance?
Sure.
policy?
Yeah, I can do the rest.
Nothing else for us, right? Thank you.
Well, you might have to come back for grant writer. I can cover
Can
it.
we skip to it?
Yeah, you want to do
Resolution
that?
To contract with a grant writer, which is tentative.
Mhm.
As we discussed upstairs, you all put in the budget to hire a granting consultant for this year. Paul and I conducted extensive telephone interviews and looked through a plethora of resumes. We've narrowed it down to a field of 3. We've asked for proposals, and Denise, Yasmin, Laura, and Paul are going to conduct in-person interviews on March 20th, so we hope to have a decision by then to get the person on board for the end of March and get them rolling for April.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Yep. Thanks, Janet. All right, I'll continue. We have resolution to adopt a fund balance policy. Pretty much spoke a lot about that tonight. Also, resolution to establish a capital reserve fund. That is going to be done in concert with passing the fund balance policy. So it's one extension of what the policy will do. We won't pass one without the other. So they will both be in concert with one another. Next, we have a resolution to set the salary schedule for a confidential secretary to the supervisor. Are there any questions on these items?
No, but for the confidential secretary, because I know you are eager, you've done a great job of trying to hold this all together. I know you're eager to get this person on board. Similar to what we did with Paul, gave us all the resumes and everything. So can we get the resumes? I know you said you had about 18 people who submitted resumes, and then who you interviewed, and if you have notes or something, it's just so we can just see what the market can bear on this, and we can move forward on it.
Sure.
I think that's really
absolutely.
fine.
Yep.
Okay. I like the way Paul did it with the grant writer, and I think we can just knock this off at the end of the month then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions? All right. We are going to skip down to 31, resolution to authorize the sale of certain town-owned items. That is Bill Lawrence.
Oh, Bill. I always feel bad when we leave Bill to the end. He's got his one thing.
We save the best for last.
Yeah. Sorry, Bill.
So these are the computers that have been taken out of inventory, replaced with new computers. We have roughly 29 computers to sell, and they go up to Auctions International. Whatever revenue we get from those goes back into the general fund. So.
Thank you, Bill. It was
Thank
worth
you.
the wait.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we have a resolution to enter into an agreement with the Mohawk Hudson River Marathon. This is something we do year after year. It's just a simple agreement to execute. And lastly, we have a resolution allowing the supervisor to enter into a renewal agreement with the Csea Employee Benefit Fund. This is for vision coverage. There's not been a change in the rate. Again, this is just a renewal agreement, typical housekeeping item that we have to renew year over year. Are there any questions about those last two items? Okay. Any other questions or issues? I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Lisa. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Everyone have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.